Hello and welcome. This is Jennifer. So glad you're here. Today I am back to share more ideas for creating a card front that pops up as soon as you take it out of an envelope. No specialty tools are required. Now I did this technique in my last video. If you missed it, I will link it up here on the top right. And in that video, I did a landscape card, like a horizontal card. Today, I'm doing vertical or portrait cards, and it's a little bit different. The measurements are different, and I have more ideas to share with you. I think you'll like all the variations, and it'll help you to do this technique with supplies that you have. All right, let's start with some stenciling. I have my Waffle Flower grip mat here. This is the same material as a clear stamp, so it has natural grip to it to hold your paper and stencils in place. I do have a clear grid on the back, so it's not gripping onto my glass work surface, but you could remove that if you wanted it to. Now I'm using the Waffle Flower Folk Art Frame. Now there is a layering stencil set, there are dies, and there are hot foil plates. Now these are sold separately so you can pick and choose. On this first card, I will only be using the layering stencils and dies. On my second card, I'll bring in the foil plates too. But you could use anything that has a large opening. So anything that ends up being 4¼ inches by 5½ inches with a large opening. You could even just use a circle, rectangle, or oval die to create that opening. All right, let's get started with the stenciling, then we'll create the opening and do the die cutting. I have a piece of white cardstock that is 4¼ by 5½ inches, and I'm putting that onto the grip mat along with the first stencil from the folk art frame. I am using a variety of colors today from different companies. And by the way, today I'm mixing a lot of different brands together. I feel like I haven't been doing that a lot lately, and it's something I like to do because I know most of you mix brands together too. So you'll see a lot of brands today. So here I put a soft olive over these openings on this leaf stencil. Then I'm going back with a little bit of darker moss to put towards the inside edge of those stems. And now for the little holly leaves, I'm going and adding fresh lawn on top, which is more of a Kelly green. And that way I have a variation of greens over this. It looks like I did multiple stencils, but really it was only one stencil with a small blending brush. Now it's time for stencil number 2. Again, I will do selective inking here so that some openings will have one color and some openings will have another color. This is my favorite light red color, Pale Tomato, but I will come back with Gina K Coral Reef and add like an orangish darker red to the center, just again for that variation. You'll notice there are some little stars in the corner. I'm leaving those out for now. I'm not sure if I want those or not, or what color. I can always come back to it. Now it's time for the third stencil, and again, I'll do selective inking here. I'm using Pink Fresh in a mint color and going over the leaves, and then the rest I'll do with Hero Art's Butter Bar. So I encourage you to reach for the color inks that you like the best for whatever you're working on. Don't worry about having to stick to one company. I'm using, I think, 3 or 4 different company inks here, and then another company's products. Mixing things is a great way to get more from your products. All right, now I'm using caramel there for the center of the flowers, and look at that result. I love it. I think it's beautiful. And remember, there is a foil plate if you'd rather foil some of that. So you can see it lines up and it does the leaf and the flower centers. I'll use that on the next card. Now we have the 2 dies. One cuts out the inside of the frame and one cuts out the outside. For this particular card, I'm only using the inside so that the outside of my panel is still 4¼ by 5½ inches. And the die set also cuts out these little flowers, which I will actually add to the inside of my card. I really like that Waffle Flower designs their products really well to really make the most use of the space. So this piece makes a lot of different things. Now again, I could use that outside frame die. I'm not using it this time, but I will use it on my next card. Now at this point, I wanted to go back and do those stars. Remember how I skipped them the first time, the little stars in the corner? I decided to do those in yellow. Sometimes I'm not sure what colors I want different parts to be, so it's okay to skip and move forward to something else and then come back to them. Now that our frame is done, let's move on to the reindeer that pops up in the center. I created this using the new Waffle Flower Folk Art Reindeer die. You can see the dies over on the right. There are 2 dies for layering the reindeer and then little accent dies. And by the way, if you like this folk art look, there are other products in this Waffle Flower line. I'll link to them below. I know there's even a cute bird. But I did the reindeer today, and I cut the body from 2 different colors of Craft Consortium glitter cardstock. Now, this is a subtle glitter, like a fine glitter. It doesn't rub off. It's not as shiny as a regular glitter paper, and I think that's good. Sometimes you want something that's not so ostentatious. It's like a soft glitter paper is what it seems like to me. And I'm putting him together with silver and champagne color glitter papers. Now, at this point, I'm wondering, should I not do glitter? I thought about doing 2 shades of brown instead. Because these dies do details, like detail lines also, you lose that when you use glitter paper, but I decided to go with the glitter anyways, and I'll save my little brown cardstock reindeer for another time. Now let's do the pop-up feature. I did do this technique in my last video, so be sure to check that out, but that was for a horizontal card. This time we're doing a vertical card, and the dimensions are a little bit different. But this is so easy to do and so effective that I wanted to be sure to do a video on it. So this time I'm taking a piece of cardstock that is 6 1/4 by 5.5 inches tall. I'm scoring at 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1 inch from one side of that cardstock piece. You can see I'm scoring at 1/4, 1/2, and 1 inch. Then I rotate it, and on the other side, I do the same thing, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1 inch. So we have 3 score lines on the 2 edges of this paper. I will then start folding along these score lines. Now, this does have an extra score line, that little 1/4 inch flap. Now, somebody asked in my last video why I had that. It doesn't seem necessary, but it does help to make it stand up straight, the front of the card to stand up straight. I tried it with and without this, and this seems to work better. There is a variation of this technique that's just a little bit different that causes the front to kind of curve out, and I'll link to that video up here on the top right and in my description below. It's just another variation, another way you can do this, and it gives a slightly different effect. I really try to share lots of ways of doing pop-up cards without needing any specialty dies. And so you'll see that I have a lot of them on my YouTube channel, but today's is a really fun and easy one. So once you're done, this is what it should look like from the side. It looks silly, but I promise it works really, really well. Okay, so now it's time to put something on the inside there. I want something so that when you look through that opening, there's some detail back there. You could leave it as is, you could stamp there. I'm going to add some detail with a piercing die. Here's the Waffle Flower Folk Art background die. You can see it on the left. And then coordinating layering stencils. These can be used together or separate. Now this die doesn't cut an outside edge, so you could use it directly on the front of a note card. Here I'm just cutting it from a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel, and you can see it pokes little holes, and also look at all that detail. It does these impressed little stars, it does like that faux stitching. I love the look of this. And dies like this are great for techniques. In fact, I'll link to my favorite technique video for a background like this in my description below and up here on the top right. Now you could use this as is, but I wanted to add a little interest to it. So the layering stencil set has 2 stencils and they line up really easily. Over one of them, I'm using some mint ink and just kind of blending it at the center of the openings so that this will give me a very soft, subtle look. I'm using a tone-on-tone ink and I'm going light-handed. Now for the second stencil, I will use white pigment ink. I have a blending brush designated just for white pigment ink. You don't want to mix it with others. And again, I'm only putting it towards the center of each of those little star openings. Then we end up with this background that has a little more interest to it because we used the white and the tone-on-tone inking. And you have all that detail of the piercing. I just think that's gorgeous. You could do this bold and colorful for a backdrop, whatever you want. I just wanted something subtle here. Now I've put some liquid adhesive on the back of that, and then I'll put it inside of our pop-up feature. It'll fit right in there between the 2 inside score lines, and then I'll put something heavy on it while it dries. Now while that has some time to dry, I'm using my Hero Arts Confetti background die. This die cuts a bunch of little circles in different sizes, and I cut from some scraps of that silver and gold glitter paper that I used on the reindeer. That way I could create little accents to put on the frame that we created, and it would better match our little reindeer on the inside. So at the center of some of the flowers and here and there, I put tiny little die cuts, glitter paper circles. I also added some details to some of the leaves and flowers using a white gel pen. I don't know, it just helps to make all that color pop even more. All of these details you definitely could skip. There's a lot of detail in the stenciling already, but I'm a big fan of those little touches that make a big difference. Now it's time to choose a sentiment, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I don't talk about this in videos much, but I do often have a hard time choosing between different products. And let me show you that thought process here. Now, I really like this Waffle Flower Holiday Cheer Sentiment Stamp Set. There's some great sentiments in here, great style, and there are coordinating dies available to cut them out. I really like the style of these, but I knew the bigger ones would fill too much of the room on this card. So I thought about this, the Waffle Flower Elegant Christmas Hot Foil Plate and Coordinating Die. This creates really classic looking sentiments, and I wondered if that would be good stretched across the card, but I was afraid it would cover up too much of my flowers. So when I'm unsure of what to do, I will use the coordinating die to cut out each of the sentiments I'm considering. And before I take the time to stamp it, I'll just put those die cuts in there and try to choose which one I like best. I was looking at two of the smaller sentiments from the stamp set and one of these foil sentiments and trying to decide. After placing those blank die cuts there, I chose the Season's Greetings. I felt it fit best there, and then I can go back and stamp that sentiment. And any leftover die cuts I don't use, I will put back in the packaging so I can save it for later, because chances are if I liked the look of that sentiment, I will be using it later on. Now at this point of creating, I still wasn't sure what I was going to use, so I decided to set it aside, move on with more of the card, and then come back to the sentiment and see what I think. So I'm moving on to adding some detail onto my little reindeer. Now I wanted the little details that I add to match the inking I did on my frame. So instead of digging for cardstock and taking the time, I have a scrap of white cardstock here, and I have blended some of the same inks that I used over the stencil for the frame. I blended those onto the scrap cardstock, and now I'm die cutting from those little inked areas. That way I know my little die cuts that I put on the reindeer will match that frame nicely. And I'm telling you, it saves you a lot of time because you don't have to dig through your scraps to find what you need. After adding in some of the little die cut details, I used a black permanent pen to color in the little eye, just so it would stand out more on that glitter paper. And I used a black gem for the nose. If you wanted to, you could make him Rudolph and add a little red gem, but I liked that little peach color on his cheek and I wanted that to stand out. Okay, so now I have decided to use the Season's Greeting sentiment. So that blank die cut from before, I glued it to the back of a stamped die cut, just so it has some strong dimension there. I'm putting liquid adhesive only on the ends of this die cut, just those little ends, because that's all it's going to attach to the frame with. So watch, it's very little area is attached there. But don't worry, I've got a trick to make sure it doesn't come undone, even with that little bit of adhesive. I flip it over, and on the back I put another die cut. And this will sandwich those little edges of the frame between our layers of die cuts, and it'll be more secure. It'll also have some nice dimension to it. So it's just stretched nicely across that opening. Now we can put this onto our base, our pop-up base. So only on those little flaps, the little 1/4-inch flaps on each side, I'm putting strong liquid adhesive. You could also use strong double-sided tape. I'm going to flatten at the 1/2-inch score line. You can see the liquid adhesive is only on that left far edge. And I'll lay the left-hand side of our frame onto that. Now, there are a few ways you can do this. This is what made the most sense to me at the time. But basically, only those 1/4-inch flaps are glued to the back of the frame. Now, I'll flatten this side, press it onto that adhesive, and then you want to put something heavy on there so it stays flat while it dries. We want to make sure it has a good connection. If you're using a strong liquid adhesive, you'll have no problem. And there you can see how it pops up. By adding that little extra 1/4-inch score line and only gluing on that flap, you get even more pop-up than if you were to skip it. And I have done other techniques in the past where there's more score lines so that it's more of an accordion fold on the side, but that does add bulk. So I found this method, after a lot of testing, really worked the best with the least amount of bulk. Now this we can glue onto the front of a card. So I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding card, and that way this will open like a traditional card and stand up very nicely on display. And remember, I have those 2 extra floral die cuts there. I thought it'd be fun to glue those on the inside of the card, and I can write my personal message between them. All right, now it's time to create a pop-up for that reindeer. And this is a really easy way to do a pop-up for any element on your card. I have a 4 1/4 by 1/2 inch piece of scrap cardstock, and I'm scoring at a 1/2 inch, 1 inch, and 1.5 inches from each end. This is a good basic size, and it'll fit nicely behind this reindeer. Now I am doing an accordion fold on each edge of this, and you can see there's that bigger platform there in the middle. We're going to glue that bigger flat platform to the back of our reindeer. And that little accordion fold on each side will cause it to pop up when it's taken out of the envelope. Now there are little wiggler, shaker thingies and other ways you can make this pop up, but this is an easy way to do this on your own and use up some of your scraps. I've done variations of this technique many times in the past, but I often forget to use it. And it really is neat because this actually will pop up even more than the frame. So it kind of pops up out of the frame in the end. Super cool. But you need to put something heavy on it while it dries. All right, let's look at the completed card. Now this does flatten nicely and go into an envelope. It will fit in an A2 envelope, but when I make a card like this with lots going on the front, I oftentimes will put my A2 cards, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, into an A6 envelope, which is slightly bigger. I'll link to my source for A6 envelopes below, but you can use A2 if that's what you have. Looking from the top, you can see all the dimension of the frame and also how the reindeer pops out even more, thanks to that little accordion fold technique that I showed you. And looking close, you can see I used the glitter paper to create accents for the frame, which helps to tie it in with that glitter reindeer there in the center. And then deep down inside of that frame, you have that textured background with the tone-on-tone inking. So this is one of my cards that I call a detailed pile-up, where I put lots of details and lots of different textures onto one card. Sometimes I think those are really fun to make, but know that you could skip different parts and still have a great card. So this is my only detail pile-up card today. The next two are actually pretty simple and are other variations of this technique. And my next card, this one here, uses the same frame, but for a non-holiday card, and I think it works out just fine. And this idea shares a different way to make that center point pop out too. Now on this, I'm using the hot foil plate with the frame. Remember earlier I showed you there's stencils, dies, and hot foil plates? I wanted to show you this option and use the foil plate along with the stencils. So I have my Glimmer hot foil machine and the Prism foil from Spellbinders. This is a great, easy to foil. And I am creating a little hinge on some blue cardstock with the hot foil plate frame. I'm putting the foil under so the pretty side of the foil touches the pretty side of the hot foil plate. Then I flip that all over and put it onto our warmed up Glimmer machine. I will then put the two shims on top of it that come with the machine, press the timer button, and when the timer button stops flashing, we'll take that platform plates everything out of the Glimmer machine and run it through our Spellbinders Platinum machine. And this will give the pressure and the heat to cause that foil to transfer, and it does a beautiful job. And the cool thing is you can do the stenciling over this. The foil will resist that dye ink that we put on top, so it's no problem at all. But in this particular case, the two stencils of the three line up with that foil, so it's actually inking around the foil. So that foil plate replaces one of the stencils in the set. All right, so I did the inking off screen, nothing fancy, same colors as before. And now this time I'm using the outer frame and the inner frame. So I taped both in place. This will also cut out those 4 little individual stars, which I'm not using on this card, but do know that it adds that detail. And I can finish off the flowers for the center and add them to the inside of the card later on. So here are the pieces that I was able to create with foiling and stenciling. Next up, I have the Waffle Flower dotted chevron die. This does faux stitching and die cuts little holes to create this fun pattern. And I thought I would use this on all of my white card. So this piece will be part of my frame that goes on the front. From that piece, I'm die cutting the center of my frame, that oval piece, and I'll run that through my die cut machine. And now I'll have an oval kind of shaped frame there. The outside edge is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I can just glue the blue floral frame on top of it. That way, around the blue floral frame, there will be that white piece with that dotted chevron pattern. Okay, now I can create my pop-up base. Again, it's 6 1/4 inches by 5.5 inches tall, and I'm scoring at 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1 inch on both edges. So this is the exact same thing we did with the last card, just this time I'm using white cardstock. And I will reinforce those fold lines with my bone folder, and I'll end up with a piece once again looking like this. Now I also want that chevron dotted texture on the inside, so I die cut another panel from that die, and I'm going to glue that right into the inside between those two inside score lines. This is just like we did on the last example. You could instead do stamping, ink blending, whatever you want inside. In my next example, we'll do some stamping. Now at this point, I'm trying to decide what to put in the focal point of this frame. At first, I considered the Waffle Flower Folk Art Tree die. I think this is adorable. There are two dies, one that creates a detailed tree, one that creates a shadow for it, and there's a stencil that lines up with it. Here's the tree that I started to make, but then I decided to make this a non-holiday card to get more life out of these products. So I used a Big Hugs die set from Concord and 9th. There are a bunch of different sentiments in it, but I had this Big Hugs sitting out because I use it so much. So I created that sentiment with matching cardstock. Next, I'm taking a piece of acetate and gluing it to the back of our frame piece. Now you could use recycled packaging. This is Hero Arts acetate. This will give us a nice window for our frame, and it'll give us a place to glue our sentiment in a moment. But first, let's put these pieces together. I'm putting strong liquid adhesive only on that outside 1/4 inch flap on the left-hand side and pressing my frame onto that. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Liquid adhesive only on that 1/4 inch flap. Then I'll fold it in on that 1/2 inch flap and press the frame onto it. Then we'll put something heavy on it while it dries. After it's dry, we can put our Big Hugs die cut right onto that acetate. So I use double-sided tape. You could use liquid adhesive too. It just takes longer to dry. And I'll place that right into the opening. And so now, because that's on that acetate, the sentiment pops out with the frame. So you can see it flattens nicely to go into an envelope. And when you take it out, it pops up and you immediately get that fun dimension. And I just think it's a great way to take a simpler card design and add some interest to it just by putting those little score lines on the back. By the way, I did put some iridescent gemstones in our floral frame so that the iridescent shine of those matches the iridescent foiling that I did. There you can see the detail that we got with that chevron die, but you could skip that if you wanted to save time. So this shows you can even just use a bold sentiment in the center, or you can put stamped images, create a scene, whatever you want. Again, if you like the look of a scene inside of the frame, that's what I shared in my last video, which I have linked to below. So my first two cards feature Waffle Flower Folk Art Collection. I wanted to do an example that was completely different, so I'm moving on to some products from Hero Arts. Again, I love to mix and match products, and I want to do better at using more than one line in a video. So this collection is from Hero Arts, and I'm using these 3 layering stencils and the die that come in the new September 2023 My Monthly Hero Kit. So this is a kit that you can subscribe to and save a lot of money, or you can just buy it as is. This is the classic kit version. You get that stamp set, the stencils and die that I'm using, some inks, and some accessories. And do know that now Hero Arts has a premium kit available too, which includes everything in the classic, but then some add-on products. The big reason I really like Hero Arts kits is because the value is like twice the cost. So it's a great way to get a lot of product and save. Now, they also have individual add-on products that they come out with each monthly release. This is one, I almost used this today. In fact, I might use one of the sentiments on the inside of my card, but I thought this stamp set and die set were so cute that I wanted to just show you, even though I didn't end up using it. But no, there are a lot of different products that fit that theme, and I'm really into these mushrooms lately. So let's do the stenciling. I'm starting with one of the stencils and I'm putting Cup of Joe ink on it, which is a great brown color from Hero Arts. And I put that on light-handed over the whole thing, but then I'm going back to some of the images and applying it heavier. This will give me the look of taking the time to do selective inking, but really save time by just putting it one color darker in some areas and lighter in others. Then on the next stencil, I'm using Coral Reef from Gina K to do the top of the mushrooms. I thought bright reddish color would be pretty. That piece in my left hand is just blank stencil material that I like to move around to mask off different areas. When I'm doing selective inking, I'll link to that blank masking product below. Next, I'm adding some darker color with espresso. And by the way, I'm speeding through this because we're running out of time on this video, but it really is easy to just ink these however you want and you'll get great results. Then for the base of the little mushrooms and some of the leaves, I'm using sand, which is the perfect light brown. And then for some of the other leaves, I'm using caramel, so it brings in kind of that warm yellowish brown. And there we have our inking. You could use this as is on a card back, but I'm going to use the coordinating frame die. So I'm lining that up with the inking that I've done, and then I'll run it through my die cut machine. Now the die can be used alone because the die creates little details or outlines of all of those images, but when you use it together with the stenciling, it really brings it to life. And now we have that open window in the center that'll be perfect for today's technique. So off screen, I trimmed this down to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. You can see the panel there on the right. Then I used the die and cut it from another piece of white cardstock that I messily trimmed to be a little bit smaller. Now this one is just getting glued behind our inked one. I wanted this card front to be stronger since it's going to be kind of a bridge between the pop-ups on the side. So by doubling it up, it's a lot stronger and you get that added dimension. So that's 2 layers thick. For a sentiment, I'm using the Pink and Main Simple Greetings die set. This is a great die set. Here's all the sentiments in it. I've been using this one a lot off screen, so finally time to use it on screen. I thought the Just a Note would be nice inside of this window, but there are many sentiments there that would work with this card design. And I created that sentiment out of white cardstock and gold matte cardstock. Now while the sentiment dries, let's create our pop-up base. Once again, it's 6 1/4 inches by 5.5 inches. And I'm scoring at 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1 inch from each edge. Same thing we did with the other 2 cards earlier. Before I fold along those score lines, I thought I'd do some stamping. So I have this beautiful new background stamp from Hero Arts. This will definitely be on my favorites list. The detail in the stamp is just gorgeous. I think it'd be fun with bold color, but today I'm using it for a subtle look. I'm stamping with Versamark ink, and by the way, that base piece there is actually cream color cardstock, not white. But I'm white heat embossing on it, so you get a really soft look, that white heat embossing on the cream cardstock. But it's really pretty in real life. I love that pattern. Now I'll fold along those score lines, just like we have many times in this video, and we end up with our pop-up base. So now we have our base, our frame, and our sentiment. Let's glue the sentiment onto the frame. I'm just putting liquid adhesive on the outer edges, on the left and the right of that sentiment, and gluing it over the frame. Then I'll flip it over and put another die cut back there, again to sandwich the frame in between the edges of that sentiment, just so that I can be sure it stays put. I'm putting strong adhesive on that 1/4 inch flap on the left-hand side, and I'll place my frame onto it, and then do the same thing on the right-hand side. If you don't want to have to wait for the liquid adhesive to dry, double-sided adhesive would work well here too. Now I thought I'd kind of give this card a little more of a playful look and kind of make it pop a bit more by adding little white dots onto my red top mushrooms. I just thought that would be fun, and in the end, the white gel pen, some of the red ink kind of soaked up, so they're like a light white dot. If you want it to be more intense white, you just let the first layer of white gel dry completely and just put another layer on top of it. But I liked the softer look. I finished off the card by adding a few gold gemstones around the frame, and here we have it. Again, we have that sentiment that pops up with the frame, this time because it's attached on both sides to the frame. This is all on the front of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. Here you can see the detail of the stenciling and the detail that the die gives, and that white heat embossed texture on the inside. And once again, this will flatten nicely to go in an envelope, and as soon as you take it out, those little folds on the side will cause the front to pop up, giving dimension, and it'll stand very nicely on display. So I used products that create like a frame for a card, right? But you could use basic shaped dies for that center opening if you prefer. So check around on your supplies, see what you have that might work for this. And if you're interested in what I used, I do have it all linked below in my YouTube description. I am always so very thankful for the long amount of time you spend with me to watch these videos. It's really appreciated. At the end here, I'll link to a couple other videos I mentioned during this one, and I will see you again soon with another video. Take care.